And last but not least, the last book that I finished reading was Dominicana by Angie Cruz. Now, Angie Cruz popped up in my feed, or the book Dominicana popped up in my feed via, I think it was on Instagram, or maybe it was Twitter. Hashtag Dominican Twitter, what up? And I don't remember exactly by who, but I started seeing and hearing about it more and more. There was like a buzz around the book. So I knew the book was written by a Dominican writer, so right away piqued my interest. I'm biased, what can I say? I'm Dominican. The title being Dominicana was obviously cool. The book cover was like simple but captivating. And again, I kept hearing like good things, good reviews, good buzz around it. So I decided to check out, what's this book about. I'll share with you folks the summary of it. Angie Cruz's Dominicana tells the story of a 15-year-old forced to marry an older man to help her family. 15-year-old Ana Cancion doesn't want to marry Juan Ruiz, a man twice her age, who promises to take her from the Dominican Republic to New York. And then I found out that it's based on a true story. It's a story of her mother migrating from the Dominican Republic to New York and all the trials and tribulations that she went through in doing so. That definitely sold it to me right there. It's definitely one of my writing goals, as I've shared with you folks in the past. But if you didn't know, definitely a writing goal of mine is to write a story about my father's life coming from Dominican Republic to New York and some of his experiences. And although, I have ideas for that book already that I've started putting down, it's a book that I'm not ready to write yet, and I don't want to write yet until I've sharpened my sword a bit more, so to speak, until I sharpen my skills, until I improve my writing enough so that it's worthy enough of writing that story. So I've made the mental commitment to make it my fourth or maybe fifth book. Definitely after the Fractal trilogy, second book being worked on as we speak. Book one available on Amazon, or go to spuntoday.com/books/fractal. And third book TBD. But yeah, so it'll be the fourth or maybe the fifth, because I do want to maybe write a standalone novel after the Fractal trilogy. But we'll see. We'll still a ways away from that. But yeah, I heard the story and I was like, of course I have to read this. It was so engaging. The book was so good. My wife listened to a lot of it with me and she loved it also. And what did it for me, aside from the Dominicanness of it that I can obviously relate to, was Angie's descriptive ability. I saw what she described, I felt what she emoted, and it really was a very interesting story. Her mother, as the description said, and again, this is loosely based on her mother's life, so it's not like an autobiography, but it's largely based on her mother's life. She was pretty much an arranged marriage, which is common, especially back in the day in DR. The way it worked was her family lived in the campo, and more affluent folks that lived in the cities would go to the campos to look for these good sheltered girls to marry, and pretty much make their wives to cook and clean and bear children, which was the trade-off for them. And then for the family that was in the campo, the positive on their end was being able to move on up from the campos to cities, and maybe even travel to New York, was the case with her mom. And her mom was 15 years old. She was married off to this guy that had a restaurant in the city of Santo Domingo, and he traveled to New York and worked in New York, and then traveled back home and took money back home and was working on building his restaurant. And she had a pushy mother that wanted the betterment of the family, but in doing so pretty much sold her daughter off to this guy to try to achieve that goal. And the guy promised to purchase some of their family's land there in the campo, and to build something on it. I don't know if it was like a restaurant or just to help develop the land and make them some money. And the mother knew that with the daughter going to New York, the quote unquote land of opportunity, she could find like a job and be able to send money back home, like many other folks that left DR and came to the States did for their families. And it chronicles her life in coming to New York and dealing with the language barrier and ambitions of wanting to go to school, wanting to get a professional career, not just be a housewife, dealing with an abusive husband that she didn't want to be with in the first place, but is with for the sake of her family, and pretty much how she's forced to grow up and become a woman in a very pressured kind of you have no other choice type of way. She goes through some shit while she's here too, like her, spoiler alert by the way, like her brother dying, one of her brothers dying in DR while she's here, and not being able to be there for that. The husband lent a friend, well, not a friend, an acquaintance money, and held her wedding ring as collateral, and she was coming by every week and paying it off slowly, and at the end of paying everything off, she would get her ring back, obviously, her wedding ring. And in that time, her coming over, she like befriended Anna, which is Angie's mom in the story, and she could like completely confided in her, and then she wound up giving her like a sob story, like when she had like half the payments left to pay, and she wound up giving her the ring back, but she promised she would come back the next week and the week after that and the week after that and actually finish paying, but she got G'd, and that was like a hard lesson for her to take, but a necessary one about not trusting motherfuckers in the streets. But yeah, she eventually comes into her own, and it's a dope book, man. I definitely recommend it. I couldn't recommend it enough. Check it out. It's called Dominicana by Angie Cruz, and I will link to it in the episode notes.